And the Libsyn will actually kind of give us a bit of a countdown, so that's cool.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like about Libsyn. Like, it gives you that 3, 2, 1, go. And that's just a feature you don't see in a lot of recording software, you know?
I just tend to edit out all the beginning anyway, so just press cut and then delete it.
Right. Yeah, you kick the dog out of that room. I don't need him in here doing dog things. Wife just got home, so. All right, Freelance, you ready?
Yes, I am. I already have the cold open ready. We're good to go.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. So what was that you were telling me earlier about the, I think it was something about a graveyard experience that you had?
Ooh, yeah. So I got a good murder mystery for you guys. Me and my friend decided to go for a walk into a graveyard, and then we see the most random tomb labeled Cassidy on it. We were very, very curious about it the more and the more when we decided to get home. And then when we finally got home, we were researching on it, and it just decided to be a whole wormhole of like, so this guy was actually died in the 1960s, right? But the tomb he was put in belonged to another family that was also called Cassidy's that were dead in the late 1800s. No relation to them at all.
Okay, so that sounds like some D&D plot hook. Like, am I supposed to, like... I think I could probably throw something like that into a campaign. Like, oh, you got this person that's unrelated to an entire family, but the same name. There's some overlap there.
Exactly. And the plot goes deeper because they were all sorted into like religious views and stuff. The only real conclusion that we could have is this particular character decided to do something for a particular religion, stepping outside of the bounds of his original family's religion. And because of whatever this guy did, we must conclude that as praise, he got to get put into this tomb. But other than that, we have nothing. We do not know why this character is here.
Okay, that's fascinating. I could see that for like a paladin kind of plot hook, like like maybe you have a relative and he finds out about this thing, and one thing leads to another. Probably some zombies in a tomb, you know.
Exactly.
I like the general direction where that could go. There's a lot of possibilities.
No, yeah, it was very free-forming, and our imaginations were running rampant when we got back home and we started to do more studying into the subject. I couldn't stop thinking about it.
Well, it's that aspiring DM brain, really cultivating that with you. But you know what? I think it's time that we get this show rolling. Welcome to Dungeons and Talkshows, the talk show that brings you apparently graveyards, news, and homebrews. I am your host, Orion. Now, I have someone special in studio with me today because Sam is on vacay. Bring back Freelance Comrade. How you doing, buddy?
First name Free, last name Comrade. I'm doing pretty well. It is a shame that we don't have the consistency of Sam, but hey, we all need a vacation, am I right?
That's true, but you know what? To kind of keep this all refreshing, we have a beautiful guest with us as well. How about you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Keshia, and I am the Dungeon Master for Throne of Dice, as well as the host for Confessions of a Game Master, both podcasts you can listen to on various places. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you on, and honestly, like an accomplished DM and podcast host all at the same time, like you're doing good for yourself already.
I don't know. We've been on hiatus with Throne of Dice for a while, and we're coming back in November finally. But I'm really excited.
Coming off hiatus, every DM's dream.
Yeah. Well, when the pandemic, quote unquote, ended, we ended up having to go back to work, and we didn't
Oh
really have the
no.
time for it. So now we're finally in a place where we can all come back to the table and do all the stuff that we wanted to do.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Making content and entertaining people. It's what it's all about.
Hell yeah.
Well, the big bad of campaigns in general, in my experience, is having a work life and then that work life not balancing with the home life. So yeah, it's good to see that you're getting the band back together, though.
Oh yeah, and the response that we've been getting from the announcement has just been overwhelmingly positive and wonderful, and people being like, "Oh my God, the gals are back!" And I'm just like, "Yay!" People missed us.
Absolutely. Could you tell us a little bit about your party composition? I mean, everyone's always interested in like what really makes the dynamic for a party, you know?
So the party dynamic for Throne of Dice is a mixture of shenanigans and trauma. So we have Sir Fluffles McTavish, the 300 some odd year old drow assassin who is kind of a weirdo, if I'm being honest. And it's hard to encapsulate all that Fluffles is, but he has a Scottish accent. His boyfriend Hillier and him have adopted a young little Eladrin named Murphy that they found on their trip, and yeah, he's kind of become almost the dad of the group. Then there's Azura Droplet, who is the water genasi, who is quite young. She's only about 30, and she is trying to find her lost mom and dad, which in the very last episode before we went on hiatus, we found out that her dad was dead.
Ooh, so like the plot thickens, and you got people on a bit of a almost cliffhanger there, and then you got group dad. I'm already a fan of the dad of the group because everyone's familiar with the classic mom of the group, but I feel like this is kind of a twist on the classic that works very well.
The ironic part is that Jackie, who plays Fluffles, is a mom and the only mom in the group right now. So it's kind of funny. But and then the third player character is Oddbell, or Sky Full of Stars. She got the name from a little girl, Oddbell, and just stuck with it. And she is a Tabaxi Swamp Witch character, cleric, who defiantly wants to use necromancy at any point, to the point where she has exploded a bird in front of the party.
Damn.
She put a whole mind flayer in a bag of holding.
Now, that's something I'm going to have to listen to find out how that happened now, because last time I threw a mind flayer at one of my parties, they're just like, that's a mind flayer. No, absolutely no, and teleported out of there quicker, just as soon as it showed up.
So for the Curse of Catalosa campaign, because they are a main reoccurring baddie, I've had to scale them so that they don't just insta-kill the party. Because for plot reasons, they need to reoccur. But yeah, they've been a fun thing to bring in and screw with people. And then the party has about 2 NPCs that follow around that are plot important, but they don't really... I'm lucky if I remember they exist, honestly.
I do feel that, because sometimes that's just the nature of things, because there's always those few NPCs that kind of slip through the cracks.
Yeah. I mean, one is a Kenku named Tika, and he has been with the party since Fluffles and Oddbell were trapped in the prison of Adilo, the town where they were on trial. And then Rowan, who was part of the party that rescued them from the death caravan.
I do like that name, Rowan. It's my wife's favorite name when it comes to stuff. I think she named one of her characters that, and if we had another kid, she was dead set on going for that name again. Heaven forbid, too many kids.
If I were, it was one that I was going to pick as a middle name if I was going to be a mom, but yeah, I have to explain it because otherwise it's odd. Okay,
Go right ahead. Go ahead.
I found out in the last year that I can't have kids, so.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, so I just have like names. Maybe I'll give them to dogs.
Well, you know what? The thing about being a DM is you'll have an endless supply of names, and that's just the nature of the beast right there.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, or alternatively, you could like go and just adopt an entire party for yourself. It's just that there you'd have family D&D every week and a whole house full of kids all in one place.
I'm just gonna knock on some random person's door and be like, "Hi, we're playing D&D now," and they're gonna be like, "I don't know who you are. Get out of my house." And I'm like, "No, pick up your D20. We don't have D20s. We don't play this game. Get at the fucking table."
I had kind of the opposite experience happen once during a D&D game where this drugged out dude comes knocking at my door and he's all, I'm running a game, everything's all weird and shit. And he's like, "Hey man, don't kick me out. I just want to be friends." Now, everyone there, for whatever reason, I live in Maine, so maybe being close to Canada, y'all can relate to the everyone has a knife because, yeah. So everyone's like hand on a knife in the room, and we had like 7 players. Biggest party I've ever managed, and we're all kind of running through our heads like, okay, do we bring him into the game or do we send him on his way? Ultimately, I sided with send him on his way because I was drinking too much to actually deal with that shit.
Fair. I mean, no one wants to deal with some drugged out lunatic at their table.
Absolutely.
Unless it's in the game.
I didn't know if you guys noticed that I laughed. I am extremely sorry about that.
How dare you?
I noticed, but I didn't say anything. I wouldn't want to be rude.
How dare you? Oh, there it goes again.
Oh no. The endless freeze frame. See, no one can ever replace Sam. Point in case right here.
Even the technology disagrees that you can just replace him.
It's skeptical that I can, but intrigued that I may. I couldn't possibly.
Oh, is he coming back?
It would seem so.
It just keeps dinging at us.
Yeah, I do like that Libsyn kind of like lets you know if someone goes or not. That way you're just not rambling. It's like, oh, what happened here?
Oh, I've done that so many times, but usually just on phone calls.
How about imagine? Kind of a universal thing, really.
Yeah. Well, it dinged at us that he was coming back. I don't know if he's coming back now.
It looks like he's having a lot of technical issues on his end. But moving forward, I think our audience would like to know like a little bit more about your the podcast that you run where you're not DMing. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so Confessions of a Game Master is a show where I bring on dungeon masters and game masters from the community so that they can share all of their successes and shames as storytellers of TTRPG games. And if you've listened to my show, I've pretty much memorized that whole intro spiel at this point. But yeah, I have dungeon masters come on, and then they bring out their D20 and then they pretend that their D20 actually matters, but the questions are for the shames portion are all nat ones. You're going to confess to me all of your dirty secrets.
Ooh. So should I be confessing some dirty DM secrets? I got a few.
I mean, if you want to roll on the table, I can give you one of the questions.
Ooh, I am ready for this. I got a D20 that lights up at hand, so I am good to go. My wife got me these, so I always an excuse to exploit these things. Fuck yeah, 12, no modifiers.
Have you ever fudged a roll?
Absolutely. I've had so many instances where it's like, do I really want to wipe this person over this? There have just been issues where it's like, oh, I don't want this to turn out the way it is, and typically I'm more than happy to like let the dice fall where they may, but unfortunately, like there are just sometimes where like I can't let this happen. Oftentimes it'd be like if I have my brother playing, I let the dice fall where they may most of the time with him, and there are like I fudged like maybe 2 rolls with him in the entire campaign I had him, but it got to a point where I allowed him to take the lucky feat twice because his rolls were so terrible with that character.
Oh no. I love using it just for so I have this problem where people will be like making really cool ideas, and I know as a dungeon master I have a responsibility to just be like, yeah, roll for it. But then I've fallen in love with the stupid idea, and I'm like, I can't actually tell you no because I want to see it happen. So, that roll that I made to see if you would pass me, definitely, you got it. You won. Good job.
I feel that because some of these convoluted ideas are just too much fun to say no to. Like when my party tried to sneak into a jail by getting the druid to turn into a spider and then getting him all hopped up on haste potion, which basically amounts to like this roided out speed spider zooming in, zooming out.
Why did I just imagine super buff Peter Parker?
I mean, my mind goes straight to that, you know that movie with a snail, Turbo? It's like that in my head.
God.
With a spider.
Now I've also imagined just a roided out, I bastardized the name for another project I'm working on, but I can't remember the actual name. It's the drow spider, the Drider.
Driders. I'm very familiar with them. If not for this there's a webcomic in which called Spinneret, right?
Yeah.
And in Spinneret, they made it so like the D&D gods are actually real, and the one of the earliest antagonists of this series is just like, oh hey, I'm the real Spinneret. I claim it first. I grabbed this OG book from way back when the original D&D that has real spells in it. I'm going to sell my soul to Lolth and become a Drider. Which was like on the Spider-Man tangent. The main character Spinneret is she's like a female Spider-Man, but she's got like these 6 arms, and she gets her transformation into a spider person, and she's all like, I got girl abs, and then it's short-lived because to hide the extra arm she has to wear a fat suit. So imagine going around a college campus, you got these sick abs, but you gotta hide inside a fat suit. Everyone thinks you're fat, and it's a wild time. They even have a league of Canadian superheroes, like Werewolf of London, Ontario, the Green Gable, a Were Cerberus. It's a fun time. If anyone hasn't checked out Spinneret, I highly recommend it. They even have Benjamin Franklin as a superhero, where he's just like, he's like. He does his kite experiment. A time traveler kind of scoops him up.
Canadian superheroes, right?
He leads the American superheroes, but like they network with the Canadian ones.
No sense. I was like, good, because That makes no sense. Canadian.
No. They have Ben Franklin as like the leader of the American superheroes, and like his only superpower is that he's so important to history that because he's in modern times after hitching a ride with that time traveler, the universe bends around him to keep him alive, so nothing can hurt him.
That's not a superpower. Oh, that's hilarious. Just using him as a human shield. A human meat shield. Yeah, no, part of me was not sure because I was like, they might have made it super memey where he was part of the Canadian group just because like history forgot about him and he needed a place to go. And the Canadians accept everybody, so
I mean, fair enough. I mean, they have one Canadian superhero that's just this furry that's got like 9 tails, cat of 9 tails. Like, oh, okay, I see what you did there.
So just took a Pokemon and was like,
yeah.
That's so wild. Oh, but yeah, no, fudging the rolls, very good. Approve. I don't like doing it if it's if they've won out against me in a roll and I didn't want it to happen. I will let it happen if I didn't want it to happen because I feel like it's completely unfair of me to call something if I'm not going to let them do it.
Yeah. I think the other time that I might fudge a roll is just to let the bad guys get a couple hits in.
Yeah.
If they're just rolling just complete dog shit that night. It's like, I'm not going to let them do something that's going to just decimate the party. Just they need to get a couple hits in. Bare minimum.
Or if the NPC that is supposed to be helping them starts almost killing them, I will fudge their rolls so that they fail. Or do better. If it means the difference between a TPK and the NPC fudging a roll, I'll have the NPC fudge the roll because I don't want to kill. I don't want the TPK badge. I am not done torturing my party members.
I definitely feel that. Like, I'll toe the line with how things go, but I'm not about to just push for that TPK. I really don't want it, and I've had tons of close calls of almost killing my players, like my brother's character, Mikkel, nearly falling from a lighthouse multiple times in the same session.
Maybe you shouldn't climb the lighthouse that way, dude.
He had a history of bad decision-making with that one.
Welcome back, Freelance.
Yes, thank you. I'm extremely sorry about that. Yeah, no, I've always been worried about TPK kills because as a new DM, I've always wanted to inspire challenging my players, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I don't want to create a labyrinth that they won't be able to get out of, but at the same time, I want them to feel fulfilled when they get out of it.
Yeah. It's tough because, like, if say you put puzzles in front of them, you better be picking the puzzles from your local Cracker Barrel. or like whatever restaurant franchise does puzzles in your area.
Look at your local kindergarten plan for the semester and just like take puzzles out of that.
I get mine from cereal boxes.
Yeah, you definitely have to keep things easy as you introduce it so that way you could see where your players are at and see it's like, okay, he looks like he could take on a little bit more challenge.
Oh,
even
absolutely.
The ones that seem like they often will surprise you in that even the toddler level puzzles, they'll overthink it and they'll just sit there for hours being like, but there has to be more to this. It's not just a door.
I will plead guilty to that. As a dungeon player, I always overthink the problem.
Oh, I'm guilty of it too, for sure.
I got a happy child in the background there.
They're just happy about the puzzles.
Hey, my little puzzle solver. Okay, yeah. Just run away. Go ahead. This puzzle will remain unsolved.
All right. So in my absence, did we end up talking about a home brewing item at all?
Not yet. We saved that for closer to the end of the show.
Absolutely. Just wanted to make sure it's ready.
More of a way to just kind of, bring it all together at the end.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, we just talked about my shows, and then I had him roll on my table of questions that I tend to ask on my Confessions of a Game Master show.
Sure.
So happy. Laughing babies, the best.
Yeah, no, his children are the greatest. You really gotta love them.
They certainly have given KP baby fever. Every time we go to visit you guys, she's just got an armful of children.
And when they leave, she couldn't be more doped out.
Well, I get my dopamine from the D&D, so.
Give them back.
It's kind of like my general stance towards dogs. I hate having a dog, but if it's someone else's dog, gung ho, go ahead, dog all day, because I don't have to deal with it afterwards.
Yeah.
I find puppies are the worst, but like, I don't know. My dog, she's really good at listening. I also spent a lot of time training her, which I find a lot of dog owners don't really spend the time on, and then they wonder why their dog is so hard to be around.
Oh no, absolutely. I feel like half of what makes a good event, like having a dog in your life, I feel like half of it is the relationship you share with it, making sure that it's how you would want it to behave, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. I mean, training is a bonding experience.
Oh no, absolutely. Because you're learning how to teach and it's learning how to learn.
I think that's kind of where a lot of potential in like a typical D&D campaign can come from, with the party NPC, the one that every party adopts, or maybe there's a couple of them. There's
a lot
of you know what I'm talking about.
I'm just imagining a party just treating their NPC like a dog. Just on a leash, forcing it to be a dog.
Well, I can definitely see that. I mean, with the party that I ran recently, we had the resident goblin boy Gorko, and Gorko. There was a point where he had such a near-death experience that he's like, I can't stay with you guys. I'm not strong enough. I can't support you the way that you need to. I need to. I'm gonna hang back and become stronger so that maybe one day I can return the favor for all the times you've saved my life.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of
and I'm kind of done now.
I didn't want Gorko to die, so I gave him a training arc.
Oh, that's so funny.
I can't help but thinking about the NPC that's being forced to act a certain way within the D&D group. It's like this NPC would like to be a part of their group by like any means necessary, and the group's all like, nah, the only way you're going to join is if you act like a dog. And then he immediately gets on all fours.
That's so pitiful. Damn, party simp. There you go.
Oh no, absolutely. He sits there and he's got like the head tilt thing with his tongue sticking out, and then everyone looks at the party leader, and the parties are like, "Oh God."
and then the bard's like, "You know what? I'm kind of into it."
Yeah. You know what? Not bad. Not gonna lie. Yeah.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Oh, bards are always the funnest, in my opinion. I've always loved a good bard. The nice comic relief for me.
Oh yeah.
Oh, how so?
Funny.
Oh, well, it doesn't matter the tense situation. If you have a good bard, they'll always find a way to make light of the situation. It's like, okay, let's go into this dungeon. We know that we're going to go through hell, but I got my loot. And then the paladin's like, you're less than useless with said loot, and it's like, but you're entertained.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't. It really doesn't matter. A good bard, always will go to the lowest levels of stupidity just to make that good joke. And it's like, come on, it's so necessary. I feel.
Fair enough.
If not a bard, then you at least need someone to be the dumbass that's making jokes all the time.
Absolutely.
Like, Throne of Dice, our comic relief is the cleric necromancer, Tabaxi. And I remember this one moment where the king's right hand that they had captured after she had transformed back from being turned into a donkey. She'd said something like "go choke on a hairball" or something, and Oddbell reached into her pocket, pulled out a bunch of hairballs, and was like, "Hey, do you want one? Do you want to try
Beautiful.
it?"
Yeah, you see, it's that kind of lighthearted, and you don't really know where you're gonna get it. Like, sure, it's stereotypically the bard, but a comic relief necromancer has so much potential.
Oh yeah, and it's so funny when that happens. Instead of being the brooding, "Oh my god, I'm a necromancer, my life sucks because death." It's so much funnier when they're hilarious.
Or even when they do it ironically, it's like they know that they feel like in a depressed situation, but they're gonna make the best of it.
And then you get those underhanded, like, dark comments that are really funny.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, I know your parents are dead, but here's your brother. He's not dead anymore.
It solves everything.
You said you'd bring my brother back to life. Well, he's alive-ish. He's kind of there. Billy, you there?
Put his arms off. It is but a flesh wound.
It works. It really does.
Yeah.
All right. So I know you're just starting out with the DMing free. Do you have any questions that might lead you to doing bigger, better things? While we have such an accomplished DM with us, I mean, my DMing experience is lacking. I've spent way more time as a player.
Oh, I would say I'm so accomplished here. I have one podcast that is coming back, and then a one shot that I've done. Like, I've done 2 games.
See,
well, give credit
that's very
where
accomplished.
I was gonna say, give credit where credit's due, especially if you take into the fact that we have a fresh, barely done a one-shot DM over here. So the questions I would have as a DM is quite literally bottomless. But I think the biggest one I would have is, how do you keep the parties in loop, like in entertainment wise, like feeling out, like, okay, this guy is feeling a little bit this way, but then we have this guy that's really into it. How do you discord that chaos? It's so, I don't know how to handle it.
I think from what I've learned from both being a player and being a DM is that, like, one of the things that baby DMs really struggle with, and what they tend to do is they really struggle with this, and they tend to try to do the I'm going to focus on the individual and try to make sure that they have fun. And then it starts being about the game that you're making, and it starts being about trying to please everybody. And people stop having fun because then you start putting people up on pedestals and start giving them more screen time than they probably should have. And you try to make everybody feel special, and you're eventually going to leave somebody out anyways. So I found that just focusing on the story and letting your players flow into the story, and then of course sprinkling in the little bits that connect to their backstories and their desires as characters, but and their experience as a collective instead of as an individual will help a lot with keeping the engagement up.
That is actually a very, very good point, especially if you take into consideration that it's like, okay, these people want to be here for a D&D game. Let's give them a story they'll never forget. That's actually, that really puts things in perspective for me, huh?
It's something that I don't think I would have noticed unless I played one of my recent campaigns that I was a player in, where I noticed that I was being like that because the DM focused so hard on making sure that each individual had fun, those of us that didn't get as much screen time or didn't get as much for their characters stopped feeling good about the way things were going. And off screen for Throne of Dice, that actually started becoming the point as well. And my sister brought it up because she plays Oddbell, that like she felt really left out too, because I was putting so much backstory emphasis on the characters that were older, that had longer backstories that I could play with than maybe hers. And she didn't feel as important. And I was like, no, but you are literally like at the center of all of this. You're living it instead of reflecting on it. And she's like, yeah, I know, but like I feel left out. And so going back into the campaign, I'm going to be approaching things a lot differently now that I have more experience and I have more dungeon master advice from Confessions that has really helped put into perspective how I want to go into this again. And
yeah, I was gonna say
yeah.
that must have really put things in perspective, considering like it's like you made the most of the situation about her, and while that was all well and good, it was on that personal DM to DP situation that felt more unconnected.
Yeah, because I mean, when
Huh.
we did the early stuff, I had after hours episodes where I'd pull them in for one-on-one character backstory stuff. And
Okay.
because Fluffles had lived so long, being 300 years old, and because Azura had a rich tapestry of people that were connected to the main campaign, I was able to do a lot with them and their backstories. So it was, going as far as Azura's player playing her own mother in the stuff, whereas Oddbell's family was not super connected to the campaign, despite Oddbell being herself connected. So I didn't have a whole lot of backstory stuff for her to do, and there weren't a whole lot of secrets to give her, and that just ended up giving her a sense of feeling like she wasn't important to the story. And yeah, I'm going to be rectifying that very hard going forward by just focusing on the party as a whole instead of as the individuals.
Yeah, no, that is actually a very, very good way to go about it, and it actually does put things in perspective for a new dungeon master like myself. So I guess my next question would be, we touched a little bit on the difficulty in a D&D game when it comes to like, okay, how difficult should I make this dungeon or make this or make that? Has there ever been a good D&D game where there wasn't any difficulty at all? Like it was mostly like, okay, we're gonna like maybe a Civil War type thing where people, it was more of a debate sense. It's like, okay, you need to go into this, you need to act like this, or the king's going to get mad and then Civil War will start. Is there anything like that?
So I think there definitely deserves to be challenges, but there also needs to be escape hatches. So like the way I kind of set up my DMing is that I will have notes for things. I'll have monsters on the sidelines and NPCs on the sidelines, and I'll let myself improv through it with them. And I will touch base with them on how everything's going throughout. And I'll just kind of keep a feel for how difficult it's feeling for them. And I'll try to find an escape hatch solution if it gets too rough, because I don't want a TPK, and I don't want to see them not have fun either, but I do want them to be challenged. And adjusting monster stats in the middle is something that I've talked a little bit on the Confessions of a Game Master show, and that a lot of professional and really skilled DMs will, if the fight is going on too long and the characters are and the players are not having fun, or the monsters are maybe decimating them, they'll lower the HP or the difficulty of some of the shots that they're doing. They'll let more things slide, and they'll make it a little easier for them. And alternatively, if things are going a little too easy, I've been known to double the HP a couple times. I've been known to make it a little bit harder, just so that they can have a little bit of that challenge and still feel like they got something out of it.
Yeah, I
Sure,
absolutely do the
absolutely.
same thing in my games, where it's just like, if they're having too easy a time, I'm going to like spice things up to make it a little bit more interesting. Like, having a total wipe can make your party feel powerful, but if every fight's like that, then it's like, okay, where's the intrigue? You know? And that's where like sometimes just even boosting a monster's HP by a little bit more, like say an extra 20 points, and then having it try to make an escape is like, okay, well, it would have been killed the previous time, but no, it's going a little further.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That definitely puts things in perspective. So, from what I'm gathering, being a DM requires a lot of contingency planning, doesn't it?
I don't know if it's so much contingency because I build in some contingencies because I like to think ahead sometimes, but for the most part, I lean on improv, on getting a feel for the situation and making decisions on the fly. But I also have a huge background in improv because I did it for 6 years in a dinner theater as a server. So that's kind of what I lean on. You can add contingencies or small notes for ways that you would want it to go if something happened. But honestly, the best way to get I find that the best way to move through a game is, despite having these contingencies, doing what feels like the most natural next step for the party and for the game.
I was gonna say, yeah, so that must real like doing it more on improv must make things feel more natural because it's like after the third or fourth, okay, the DM's changing the plan again, it's gonna feel more like he's making backup plans rather than it feeling more natural. I understand. Okay.
I
You're
think
also
most
playing
players
too.
don't notice actually, because like if when things flow, they flow.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. But so I guess the only so I guess a DM by proxy would be like the kind of helm to the ship, and like everyone else is kind of the crewmate. Sure, we're all working together to make it work, but at the end of the day, we're waiting for the DM,
Mm-hmm.
and you
But
always
Yeah.
want to make sure that they are sounding right and making sure that it sounds flowy and they know what they're talking about, but at the same time, it doesn't want to sound too preordained. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah,
Hmm.
letting their decisions affect the way that you do it. And just remembering that you're also on the ship. You were also part of how it gets there. So you having fun
Yeah.
will leak into the rest of the campaign, and going with the flow of how your characters are doing and trying to find the happy balance with what you had planned for it is often, it can feel like a lot, but when you're in the flow of gaming with your friends, it can feel just like the most natural next step to make that, like, you wanted to get them to this palace, but things happened in the middle of this fight. You said some random shit just that didn't seem like it mattered, but now it snowballs into a whole other arc that the
Hmm.
characters are really on board with.
Yeah, that's a little confession of mine is as a dungeon player, I've always had a hard time coping with that because like I always felt very segregated. It's like, okay, I want to do this, but the dungeon master has these sets of rules in the game. So when I started exploring the dungeon master, I found that it was a lot more comfortable for me because like it's the improv mixed with the fact of it's like I'm not in the game, but I'm very much in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, it can be hard because
Yeah.
there's like a lot of dungeon masters that will stick really hard to the rules, that really think that their story is the most important part of this game, and that they want people to just do what they want, which is why railroading is such a big topic in the community.
Hmm.
But it's not fun for the players, and it stops being fun for you when you start trying to control every little aspect of the game, because then you're not playing with your friends. You're just trying to write a story without having to do all the effort of actually writing it.
Yeah, it can
Okay,
be like
okay.
that for sure. One of the issues I find as a DM is more players not realizing they have as much power over the story in a campaign than they like. They really underestimate the impact that they have. Like, if someone asks me, "Is there a chandelier in the room?" The fact that you asked has already influenced whether or not there's going to be one. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like, or oh, hey, you go to this town that's in your backstory and you see a person you know who is insert backstory character here, you know, and they're like, oh, I don't know anything about this character. It's like, no, you made this person, you made up your town. Tell us about it. Give us a tour.
I made a joke once to my DM that in a campaign that I was playing, that I that the joke's on us that the bad guy was actually just this big terrible corporation insurance company, and then they decided that that is exactly what was going on.
Yeah, it that can be fun sometimes. Like, the players' ideas and expectations, or like maybe their this is what it's gonna be. I'll laugh so hard if it's this. That influences what the story's gonna be. Another thing that can really help, circling back to what Freelance said earlier, is a little something I call player profiling. Basically what I do is like I'll take one of those what is it, 4x9 cards, little poster cards used for studying. Anyway, I'll take one of those, and under each player, I'll write down some key traits that I notice that they seem to enjoy with gameplay, as well as I'll take the time to ask each player what parts of the game they enjoy more than others, and then ask the other players what they seem to notice that player enjoying more, and see where things overlap between the players. So it's like, okay, these two players really enjoy combat, these three players really like roleplay, and these two over here seem to have an overlap in puzzle solving or creativity. It's like, okay, you can kind of find a formula for the balance of your campaign based off the general interests of the party.
Yeah, that actually does put things in perspective as well. It's the attention to detail that I'm noticing is like for being a DM, it's like, sure, you could be as vague as possible. It's like, all right, we're here, we're going to do this. But then there's the other extreme, which is that being able to take little notes and making sure it is as optimal a session and a campaign as possible. So that does enter my next question. How do you handle a player? It's like you just met this guy at work or whatever, and he's all like, yeah, I want to get into D&D, but I've never really had the opportunity. It's like, okay, we're starting a new session, but how do you really help a new player, and does the other players really bounce off of that, or can it be frustrating?
In my experience, I've had to deal with a lot of new players, and really the core thing that makes a party go together is just having everyone kind of vibe with each other. So party chemistry is a thing. Like if you can get someone comfortable and get that party chemistry, then that can make a huge difference.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the only new player so far that I've really worked with is Jackie, because she was brand new to D&D when we started Throne of Dice, and she has a huge background in drama, and I've known her for years. We've met in university, and just like she meshed with the group really well, and that really helped settle her into really enjoying it. And now she's running an off podcast campaign for us. Well, not us, for me and a few other friends. And she's doing fantastic doing that. And she's just really enjoying D&D a lot. And like, it really depends on the dynamic of the people that you bring in, but it can also depend on like how you introduce it. I think one of the things that was really successful with me and Jackie is that I didn't labor too hard on trying to get her to remember all of the rules. I just helped her learn as we played, which was far more exciting for her than here's a bunch of rules, try to remember them. And I spent some time making sure that there were moments that were really specifically geared at her character so that she could like have those learning moments and learn on the fly.
I feel like that's what makes a really good DM is when you see that a new player is in it, they look like they want to be really a part of it. They look like they're really passionate. So throw them little things like that. That's actually a really good thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
we all learn kind of better by doing rather than just being preached at. So I know some DMs approach it at the level of here's all the rules, try and figure it out, and let's go. And then they kind of forget about those players. But I think it's a really good idea to take the extra time and let the rest of the group members know, hey, this person's new to it. Let's help them learn. And establishing that community feeling and team building feeling with your party before you start.
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like if I try to teach someone how to play Magic the Gathering. The best setting I can think of to ever teach someone how to play would be Commander, because as a format, that's generally, you're going to have about 4 or 5 people at a table all playing this one game. So you get to, as a new player, you look to your right, look to your left. Okay, what are they doing? What can I observe them doing? And then you can just get the gentle nudge and advice from people as everything goes on around you, as opposed to rule dump, and then it's like, okay, that's mind-boggling. But when you get to see it in real time going on around you, and then it's like, okay, I get the idea. I think I'm going to try to do this. And then it's like, okay, yeah, you got it. You got the spirit. One little thing. Perfect. There you go.
Sure, absolutely. That actually answers my next question, which was, how do you handle a player that is just like God defying? Like, no matter what you end up creating for this character, he's always going to want to push the bounds of your rules, no matter what. It's like, oh, there's a loophole there, I'm exploiting it.
Tell him you're God and you say no.
Yeah.
When I play with the Throne of Dice gals, I'm like, I am Dungeon Jesus. We will figure it out, but like, and I'm not saying entirely no, but I also don't play by all the rules, and using the rules to your advantage won't always work. So it's got to be fun for everybody.
So do you end up getting what I would guess to say is like debates mid-game with this character? It's all like, all right, so can I bend the rule here a little bit? And then it starts segueing into a little conversation there. Does that happen often?
Well, if it ever does occur, it's like, hey, I know you want to do this. Let's find a way that feels balanced and fair for everybody at the table, so that you don't seem like you're just here to break rules.
Yeah, sometimes it really is like that, because you're going to get, every now and then, you'll have one person that just wants to just abuse the rules, and that can be fun. Some people really enjoy just seeing what they can do from rule lawyering, and then I get it, you know? But sometimes it's just like, well, you can't bend all the rules if I'm just making shit up on the fly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, I've done away with a lot of the really stupid rules that I think, or at least all the rules that I think are stupid. And so, like, the rules lawyering is not going to work for my games because I'm not even playing by the rules. So if you want to try this crazy, wild shit, you've got to just really hardcore justify to me why you think this should work, and don't use the rules. Find a plot supported and fair reason why you should be allowed to do this.
Yeah, it's like when someone tries to bring the peasant railgun to your table. It's like, oh, fuck off.
I'll let you have a railgun, but it's made for shooting peas, and you're not going to do a whole lot of damage, but you will annoy the shit out of them.
All right. We do have a little bit of news coming out this week in the tabletop community that I did want to cover a little bit of. Let's see here. So apparently Pathfinder is getting 2 additional playable classes in a new expansion coming up. So that's a little bit D&D adjacent.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd agree. What are the classes they're introducing?
Well, let's see here. I'm skimming through this article because you know how writers just like to bury the lead. Like, you couldn't just tell me what these things are. No, you just got to like bury it in like a mountain of text.
No, you gotta click so that they get the views and they get their money. That's how that works.
Everyone wants their tacos.
Fair enough. I tried my hand at game journalism once. It didn't take.
Fair. That's a lot. Game journalism. Yeah, no. A lot.
I've run into a similar problem. I'm very much a to the point kind of guy, and that's not makes for good filler at all.
Not at all.
Is bullshit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it looks like there's going to be the Animist, a spellcasting class, which will be using Wisdom. So players will primarily be using their Wisdom stat to cast. They'll be able to create bonds with apparitions and spirits who are willing to share power. Okay, so that kind of a summoner type thing. Similar to a warlock.
Based on the name, I thought it was going to be this class that allowed you to animate objects and do spells around like animating inanimate stuff. That would be really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
that's what I
definitely
was kind of
seems like some
expecting.
kind of Yeah, it seemed like a transfiguration class of some sort for sure.
Yeah,
Initially, at least.
it seems like like it's just kind of imbuing spirits into things like stone and fire and like kind of like there is a little bit of an anime type thing. And they seem to be like deriving their power from an alternative source. So
Okay, so something I'm going to want to homebrew because it's not exactly what I thought it was going to be, and I'm going to just do it myself. Great.
yeah, that's one of the fun things about bastardizing your home systems. Like I can take stuff from Pathfinder, tweak it, now it's ours.
Yeah.
I mean, I created a whole race based off the Clash Star because I thought the Clash Star didn't go hard enough.
It's not metal enough. They're not trying hard enough. Here we go.
Well, they're called the Kalashtin, and they have like 6 sub races, and it's like your soul gets spiritually bound to another soul, and you share the same body, and it's like I chose. What are the 6 sub races? It's like bound to the Elder, bound to the Shadow Demon, bound to the Dream Eater, bound to the Nature Spirit, the Elemental Spirit, and then
that sounds actually a little similar to the second class that we're looking at right here, called the Exemplar, a martial type class that uses its charisma stat. Inspired by demigods, like Maui, Hercules, those kind of characters.
Oh.
So, they use that spark of divinity, and depending on their deeds, that can kind of like affect whatever subclass you're kind of going into, and abilities. So it's okay. I can see that, and as you go through the class, you're kind of unlocking more of your potential. So, rather than just play a race of demigod, it's the demigod class.
That's interesting.
Especially with that very unique charisma stat. Yeah, it reminds me of this one story I heard back when I first started getting into D&D. It was hilarious, and it really got me into D&D after I heard this story. It follows a character that put all of his he wanted to be a sneak type character, right? So he did it very interestingly. He put all of his extra stats into intimidation.
Oh.
So when it was so mind-blowing to me, it really put things into perspective how D&D can really work, because every single time someone saw him, he would just scream at them and they would forget he was there.
Is this the Reddit story about the orc?
Yes, you know what I'm talking about.
That was so good.
That blew my mind. I was like, wow, you can go anywhere with D&D.
Yeah.
That's the long and short of it.
I went to Deception Stat to convince a dude that he did not, in fact, bring a sled when he was looking at me, and I told him, no, you didn't bring a sled at all, and our barbarian hid it in the trees, and we stole a sled, and he just believed me because I rolled so high. But the interesting thing I find about the demigod thing is, like, do you just sign up somewhere? You're like, hey, gods, I'd like to be a demigod. I know you didn't fuck my mom, but I want to.
Well, one of the examples that was used there when I was skimming that article was Maui. And like, if you've seen Moana, like my kids have forced me to see a couple thousand times, you would know that Maui is he was made into a demigod. So that's totally a thing. It's similar to a warlock,
Yeah, but it really does beg the question, like, does he just throw his body at the cathedral and just lay there until he transcends into godhood? It's like, huh.
I feel like
how do you go about it?
Like, I feel like it has a lot of really interesting backstory things, or it could inform the entire arc of your character going forward, where you want to become part of this class, but you have to do all of the things kind of like Hercules did. That would be a fun
the
campaign.
13 Labors of Hercules.
Oh, that would be amazing for a campaign. Absolutely.
Damn.
Yeah. Well, it can
Yeah, no.
being able to define a character by stuff like that, it makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Wow. That's some actually very two unique classes.
I'm looking forward to bogarting those for my own campaigns.
Yeah. The homebrew lab we go.
Yeah, unlike D&D, who just released a barbarian subclass that is okay.
Oh, was that done in the Giants one?
Yeah, the Path of the Giants. It actually, I looked into it. It seems kind of not as hype worthy as they've made it out to be.
It just sounds like the discount way to play a Goliath. Like if you wanted to play Goliath, you should have just played Goliath.
Yeah, basically.
So, the person that actually got...
Sorry.
No, you're fine. The person that actually got me into D&D was my brother, and much like other DMs and dungeon players I've noticed, there's a lot of reminiscing for the older versions of D&D, and not a lot of the new content is as appreciative as it used to be.
I do not find that.
I didn't know if it was a minority opinion, but I didn't know if like D&D was going into an evolution for the better or the worse.
I have found with all of the interviews that I had with Confessions of a Game Master that they really like 5e. I think the problem that people are having right now is that and D&D Shorts was the one that really put this into perspective for me in one of their YouTube videos. But they said that the problem that Wizards of the Coast is having is that instead of releasing like 4 really good compendiums a year, they do one so frequently with so little content and so little good content that it's like people have lost trust and they don't want to buy the new compendiums because they don't really have anything to offer.
That sounds more along the lines of what he was talking about. Yeah.
And that does segue into something that I was about to bring up. The upcoming Phandelver and Below is coming out on the 19th. The what is it? The Shattered Obelisk. I've heard some things about that.
Is this D&D?
And yeah, it's a D&D thing. They
literally released Path of the Giants and like the giant Big B's whatever bullshit compendium like 2 weeks ago.
I know. And in a couple more weeks we got we're revisiting Lost Mine of Phandelver basically, because like Phandelver and Below, don't get me wrong, I like the content. I'm probably not going to pay for it anytime soon. Maybe I'll wait for it to go on sale or some shit.
Like or just how many compendiums have come out since Curse of Strahd and you don't know about them at all?
Honestly, like all I need is my Eberron, because that's the play setting I like.
Fair.
But I'm just looking over this. Let's see what it's got here under key features. Offers dungeon masters and players a chance to test their mettle in a classic dungeon crawl. About fucking time.
Wow.
A lot of no player in my party knows what a 10-foot pole is used for. So
what is it used for?
It's for poking traps and stuff at a distance.
Oh my gosh.
There's so many more interesting ways to poke at traps than a stick.
You could probably use a 10-foot pole for other things.
You could mimic Vlad the Impaler.
Yay! Intimidate your foes with a 10-foot pole. Get yours today. Let's see. It's got a bestiary with 24 new creatures to showcase psionic magic and mutates. Do they try and say mutants and just misspelling stuff? Step it up, Wizards. Provides a An appendix of
They can't
new
afford to, we took
consumable.
all our money back.
Okay, now they're providing new meta magic.
Oh no.
Okay. Poster. Okay, that's typical. An adventure. Really seems to be kind of lacking here, honestly.
I think the most interesting things to come out of them right now is their partnership with Critical Role, and I don't even listen to Critical Role.
Honestly, one of my favorite D&D books to come out of Wizards was Acquisitions Incorporated, and I'm not even a fan of their podcast. I just like the content of the book.
Yeah, when the third-party content's better than the actual content coming out of the company.
Well, that's what's really D&D's been built on since its first inception. One of the things that just really built it was other people making D&D better than D&D does.
Yeah, and they're really salty about it.
Honestly, but the thing for everyone to remember is this game is ours. They might make the game, but that does not by any means mean they own it.
No, and then even making the game is a stretch, because at this point it's become the community's, and they just have the title, the rights to the title. They don't really. Lately, they've just. It's not even lately. Even before the OGL scandal, they've just dropped the ball entirely on supporting the community at first of all, which is a big problem, but also putting in content that anybody actually cares about. And they're so worried about their bottom line with Hasbro that they're not worried about doing the content.
Hasbro's just breathing down their neck way too hard, and it shows. You look at everything they're making, it's like it's very clear that Hasbro is sitting there with the sword of Damocles hanging over Wizards, and it's just like, okay, well, this is going to end well. Sure, why not?
Did you see the ticket sales for Gen Con?
I have not. I heard it wasn't good.
No. Oh, okay. So, D&D, as far as I'm aware, usually like dominates at Gen Con, but they had like maybe 27% of the tickets sold, and every other, like all the tickets sold went to other games.
Wow.
Yeah, they got less than 30% of the overall tickets, which is so strange for them because usually they just dominate all ticket sales.
So, as from what it sounds like, very veteran fans of the practice, what do you guys think that Wizards of the Coast should start doing differently that they might reminisce in their old pre-cons?
Literally gut the whole company and start again. No one trusts the people that are currently running it.
Honestly, like seriously, they could just appoint Matt Mercer and most people would be okay with that.
Yeah, you could appoint some of the larger podcasts and just be like, here, you do it.
Actually, you know what? The better Matt to hand it all over to would be Matt Colville. Like, he's got experience with handling that kind of stuff at that level. Or you could team the both of them together for the Super Matt Squad.
Matt Squared.
Yeah, Matt Squared. Perfect. It writes itself.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think they lost so much goodwill that, like, I mean, even me, when I'm done the Catalosa campaign, I don't want to do D&D anymore. I want to switch to Pathfinder. Peso, they actually spend time. They know the people individually, like all of the stores individually that physically sell their materials. They have a relationship with them and actually show them how to sell or to interact with people about their gear. I learned this from our local comic brand here called Warp 1.
Interesting.
They actually talk to the store owners. They have relationships with people, and they've been branching out recently to have relationships with the audience still. And they put out a statement during the OGL crisis being like, we are separating from D&D fully now. We're building more content to like be separate. We're patching in the lore that will help us remove the D&D influence, and we are going to be our own thing. and we want to embolden the community, and we will not change our OGL on you.
Yeah, I got to give them a lot of credit for that. They're doing really well. And I'm seeing some more impressive homebrews coming out for Pathfinder. I think the biggest point, in case I have to point to, is a guest that we had on a few months ago. We call him the Candyman, but you can find him on Twitter. He's making this entire candy Pathfinder setting with heritages, races, classes, weapons, items, all kinds of crazy stuff. If you've ever gotten if you've even seen an episode of Adventure Time, these are the vibes this guy's giving off. So imagine having an entire campaign and with all these silly kind of characters, but everyone's taking it serious. Have a fucking lemon drop character and like a little cinnamon bun here, a man made of fucking Twizzlers, and it's just like, that's oh great. No, Twizzler man, he's down. Go on without me.
I actually, in truth, I kind of like the Pathfinder mechanics now that I've looked into it. I mean, their critical thresholds are way more intuitive and way more interesting. So if you have a challenge rating and the player gets 10 or above, they get a critical success, or if they hit a 20. Then if you get 10 or below, you get a critical fail.
Yeah, I've seen those thresholds used in other systems, and I do like it. I ran a Ruby campaign as a couple of one-shots for some of my players, and it has a lot of rules that overlap with Pathfinder, like having the 3 actions to a turn, having what you just said with the thresholds. Like, if you go over a certain threshold, 5 to 10, then it's like, okay, you're going to get bonuses or criticals for how much over the threshold you're going for, and it's like, okay, that makes tons of sense.
Like, one of the things I've always found frustrating about D&D is maybe I roll a 19, but I have a plus 15 to my modifier, but someone else with a plus 2 rolled a 20 and they get a crit and I didn't.
Honestly,
and I've always found that super frustrating.
Like, older editions of D&D had crit thresholds depending on weapons. So it's like, you could get a 19 or 20 on lots of weapons, and that would have been perfectly critable most of the time.
I feel like on weapons, that's just really confusing, though, keeping track of all the different weapon stats. Because I already struggle with figuring out what the modifier is for certain weapons when I'm playing. And I just, I could not keep track of all of that.
It's usually pretty simple, like daggers, for example, like 19 or 20, that's a crit. It's one of those things where it's usually like very mundane, like bladed weapons. So it's like, if something's more precise, of course, it's going to be more likely to get a critical.
Okay. There's one other rule that I really love from Pathfinder, and it's the way that they scale their proficiency. And instead of doing it by your class, they do it by whether you are untrained, trained, expert, master, or legendary, I think are the 5. Ooh. And you, it's 0, then +2, +4, +6, +8. And it really, it feels a lot more, it feels more in tune with the way that you would want to scale a character. Whereas oh, I just naturally get more proficient, but I don't get to change that. I don't have any training that can fix that proficiency. I just have it. It feels less natural in D&D now that I've seen the Pathfinder way of doing it.
Yeah, and that's something that was very much in a part of D&D in previous editions. The most Pathfinder I've played was the 1st edition Pathfinder, which is very, it's almost interchangeable how much Pathfinder 1 is and 3.5 D&D, that if someone brings me something from either or and I'm running that kind of a game, it's like, go ahead. It's almost interchangeable. I'm perfectly fine with whatever you got.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there do seem to be a lot of distinct differences between Pathfinder and D&D. But what would be the most distinct difference between the two? if someone were to be first introduced into or like they're very, very veteranly seasoned into D&D, why wouldn't they want to go into Pathfinder even for a game or two? Like, is it that different, or can you carry your skills of D&D into Pathfinder?
I think it takes some finagling, but you can transfer if you want to.
Yeah.
Because they're so kind of close. But you might have to homebrew with 2E, you might have to homebrew a little bit more just to bridge the gap between them.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, personally, in my opinion, if you played one tabletop, you played them all. So it's just like, you'll get it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, yeah.
But let's see. How are we for time? All right. Keshia, did you have any homebrew that you wanted to share with the audience at all?
Well, my entire Catalosa campaign is homebrew.
I'll be sure to leave a link to that in the description afterward then.
Yeah, my very first campaign as a dungeon master, I was like, screw their shit. I want to make my own, and I did.
So to give us a little sneak peek as to what that's all about, let's start with the name of it.
So, Throne of Dice's Curse of Catalosa is a story about a continent that has been trapped in a... Actually, I have the intro for it. I'm going to just read that because I'm trying to remember all of the stuff about this campaign after 2 years and just starting to get back into the edits. I'm just like, I don't... Okay.
I feel that I was on such a long hiatus for the last game I ran, and then like I started going over my notes the other day. I was like, holy shit, I had an entire dungeon here ready to go.
Nice. I didn't have to do anything to get back into this. Okay. So the intro for Catalosa, which will be separated from the main podcast and put on its own when I do all the re-edits, is Catalosa resides in a lonely ocean filled with violent waves and ruthless pirates guarding the only passage to safe waters. Those waters are only accessed during winter months when the hurricanes die down, but try as they might, the four kingdoms of Catalosa have trouble crossing through there to trade in the greater world. Not that they mind. The greater world celebrates the most abominable things of this world, and Catalosa does not wish to have those ideals seep into their culture. In the very least, that would be what the kingdoms would have you believe about those other places. Catalosa's kingdoms are afraid of magic and those who wield it. They fear the people that look more like beasts that haunt just beyond the wilderness's edge, and they fear the gods that only prove to bring chaos and strife amongst their people. To understand all of this, we need to return to Catalosa's past before we can understand its present. 315 years ago, Catalosa's 5 original kingdoms celebrated magic and culture with everything they had. Festivals and joy filled their cities and towns. Trade with other lands was abundant. They celebrated their people in all shapes and sizes, and they celebrated their friends across the sea. On the eve of the summer solstice, on the outcrop across the outside of the southern reaches of the wilderness, away from the hurricanes that battered the kingdoms of Geron and Lavalin, Sakaran and Makara and Helstora held feasts where bards, magic wielders, and performers would shower the people in their gifts. It was a night like most nights of celebration, where the gods hovered just beyond the veil to celebrate with their followers. It lay just outside of what is now called Korta, which today is a town built in the ruins of Helstora's old capital, as it was their turn to host the harvest on this warm summer night. A stillness came suddenly across the crowd as a fog, dark as night, refused to illuminate under the light of the large full harvest moon as it wandered slowly around the nervous people that were gathered. The people were confused. Performers looked around nervously, trying to determine which person was creating this and interrupting the program for the evening. In the deathly quiet of the crowded festival space, the people waited in uneasy anticipation for the next performance. The silence grew, and they felt the chill of the fog seep into their bones despite the intense heat left over from the day. In the eerie silence, they began to feel the rumblings in the ground, and as they looked to the trees for the source, dread filled them as hordes of the dead, both humanoid and monstrous, poured out of the trees. Leading the charge were centuries of mind flayers who turned to the many magic wielders and made them into puppets. At the helm, on the back of a nightmarish steed made of dark smoke and ice, was a shadow elf with eyes of pure red. In his hand was a staff inlaid with a dragon shard stone in the shape of a fang. Blessed with the gift of the god of death known as the Keeper, the shadow elf known as Toruk tore through the land and murdered thousands in his quest to force submission of the people of Catalosa. The magic wielders who tried to fight succumbed to the staff and the mind flayers, and ultimately Toruk wanted to remove those who had not been gifted with magic and enslave those who were. After 4 long months of destruction, the humans, elves, dwarves, halflings, and gnomes banded together and found a way to stop Toruk, but the damage was done. The magic wielders and the races that did not fight were banished to the wilderness, executed, or enslaved. Religion and magic were outlawed, and any kingdoms that were lenient to magic were just as brutal at any sign of necromancy. Even those exiled to the wilderness saw necromancy as a sin and taboo. No one practices it now, and the art form is all but dead. Toruk was assassinated after 30 years of running from the people who had destroyed his staff and thus destroyed his army of monsters and death. The nightmare they tell little children is that he haunts the wilderness as a lich, waiting to return and finish his quest if the little children refuse to listen to their parents. People know this tale as a nightmare bedtime story, but still live in a world scarred by the prejudices this brought the kingdoms. They learned when Hellstora tried to rise up and set things right that fighting this prejudice was futile, and the iron rule of Sakaran was now the law of the land. No magic, no beasts, and no gods unless you want to die.
So immediately, right off the bat, my first question has to be, your players are going to take place in this land?
Yes.
Yep.
So immediately, second question would be, none of them are allowed to have magic classes? Is that going to be like the rule of it? Are we going to have to are they going to have to do like barbaric or thievery or those types of things? Is there like no clerics or anything like that?
So the 3 players were told before we started that they needed to find a reason to be imprisoned in the Adilo prison inside Mykara, one of the countries, and it had to either be because they weren't human looking enough or because they had magic.
Ooh. Oh my gosh, I want to ask more, but I don't want to spoil this story. This is amazing. Oh my god!
You'll have to catch up with the adventures. You gotta start watching the show.
No, absolutely. That a land bewitched by PTSD. That is such a heavy subject.
Yeah.
A land bewitched by PTSD has got to be the best sentence I've heard all day.
You could put that on a t-shirt.
Oh my god.
Yes. Damn.
But holy, like they were so towards magic and it was such a faith, and then mind flares? What the hell?
Yeah.
Dude, Illithids are a crazy
centuries of mind flares. That's a sentence.
I will say that
centuries.
Yeah. So like he made them the leaders of his army.
Oh my god.
You know what? I will say that you may want to consider a bit of a side career in audiobooks, after listening to that initial read there,
I've thought about it.
I think with a little bit of a practice, kind of like getting yourself all hyped up into it, kind of just give it that little DM prowess. You got this.
I was gonna say, for someone who hasn't read that intro in a bit, you actually did say that quite flowingly. That was very pleasant to hear.
Thank you. I think I was telling my sister the other day, I was like, what if we got all of the podcast friends together from both the Dice Decided team and like the Throne of Dice team? Dice Decided we pulled because we have to work on it some more, but what if we got them together and did audiobooks the way that we do podcasts?
Having multiple voice actors do an audiobook sounds amazing. And actually it just seems like it seems like those old school radio shows that they used to do like back in the 1940s with extra steps. But I am not opposed to that.
Yeah, because I mean, there's only so much that one narrator can do with voices. As a DM, I'm sure you can relate to the I've run out of voices and now they all sound the same.
I've had to watch YouTube tutorials on how to learn more voices because I like doing voices. And like the character I'm running right now is a female, so I have to do a female voice for her. So I have a little bit of fun with that. That's kind of shaking it up.
I was playing a dude in the Catalosa, or not the Catalosa, the Dice Decided campaign, and I couldn't get my voice low enough, and I was like, you know what, fuck it. He has a bad British accent.
Dude, it's so hard to fight the British accent as a DM when you're trying to not default to something that's not normal.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's just me.
Oh, no, yeah, absolutely.
My hardest is not defaulting into a really bad Indian accent when I try to do Scottish.
That's fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to move on to a little bit more homebrew. Freelance, do you have anything you want to bring in? Because I have a stinger for this one. You might remember it from last time, actually.
Yeah, sure. Let's absolutely hear it. I'm welcome to help.
I had too much fun making that thing. So,
all right. So what it looks like here is we got the all or nothing coin.
You were telling me about this earlier. I was kind of interested because coin flipping. That's very fitty.
All right. So we have, all or nothing. The coin can be used twice per short rest, and instead of rolling a D20 dice, the player can flip the coin. Depending on the outcome is depending on whether they're going to get a nat 20 or a nat 1.
Ooh.
Yeah. And
Damn.
and to point out again, you can use it twice per short rest. That is very, very high potential.
That's super interesting.
So give this to your players that are really going for that two-face RP. Damn, I like that. It's simple, it's to the point, and can be devastating and amazing at the same time.
Yeah. This means that an attack against an enemy could fall flat or become the right hit you need in combat. A pretty simple yet intuitive item.
Or accidental suicide.
Or accidental suicide.
I do like that. And it does raise your odds. On one hand, if you roll your D20, you got a 5% chance of a 20. This is 10 times that.
But also significantly more chances for failure.
Yes, you also have 10 times the chance for success, 10 times the chance for failure. Well, here we go.
What I really like, is the content potential that can be made out of it. Like, imagine running a campaign where every player had the all or nothing coin. I mean, twice per short rest, that would get crazy. Yeah, very wild.
If you filled an entire chest with just like a small stack of these, I could see that being a thing. There's very few items that I put in campaigns that are just like mundanely available. I think something like that might be hilarious to have, but also could easily destroy your game.
I raise you a evil campaign where it's per long rest and everybody has it, and it's not an item you get, it's just a mechanic.
Yes. I'm all in. Do like a 3-month campaign of that. So assuming it gets that far. But damn. I'd love it.
That would get very crazy very quick. You said twice per long rest?
Yes.
Yeah, no, that would. Oh my gosh, the discord in that game.
Just so that it doesn't feel too OP, because if it's short rest and everybody has it, then that would just, nothing would get done and you just...
Oh yeah, absolutely. Long rest is like, okay, make it count, buddy.
And with an evil campaign, there's less problems with consequences.
Absolutely. Like, oh, I'm sorry, you rolled a nat 1 on killing that child. Whoops. I guess it's alive.
Now I look like a good guy.
You trip and give it a lollipop. No, I'm trying to strangle the kid, not help it have candy.
I love the idea that you roll in that one in an evil campaign and you just do things that make you look like a good guy, and it has to force you to just like reevaluate your entire life goals.
That's the Doofenshmirtz character arc right there.
Yeah, and since it's an evil campaign, of course, all the other dungeon players are all like, "Why'd you give him candy? That's not our objective here."
I didn't mean to do it.
Yeah.
First, I forgot.
You go to make a persuasion check, all or nothing. You fail as an evil character. It turns into a pep talk. I didn't mean to inspire him. I meant to tear him down. Like, you're just saying all these belittling things, and the person's just like, you know what? You're right. All my life, I've been a total piece of shit. It's about time I turned that around. From today, I'm gonna be the best me I can be. No, better than that.
I'm gonna be the best you because you've saved my life.
I owe you my life, sir. Goes off to it's like, you were supposed to demoralize him. Well, what do?
You know what? In my previous life, I was a public speaker, and we all know that they're the most evil. And unfortunately,
public speaking is a very evil profession.
Yeah. Unless it's D&D involved.
Yeah. We gotta weaponize it for good.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of weaponizing, I do have a homebrew. It kind of lacks in comparison to this coin here, but just something a little fun to do as the Spectral Bow, a spell, first level conjuration, bonus time to use, and it can last for up to a minute with the concentration, open to rangers, sorcerers, and wizards. Drawing upon the energies of the ethereal plane, you weave together strands of the dead to materialize a spectral longbow in your hands. This weapon lasts until the spell ends, or the weapon leaves your hands. You can use this weapon to attack a creature you can see within 120 feet. Striking unerringly, it deals 1d8 force damage. This magic bow it requires no ammo, and has the two-handed property. If the target is under the effect of the shield spell, they take no damage from the attack. And it can be upcast, so that's always fun. You add your spellcasting modifier to the damage roll whenever you attack with this weapon after you start upcasting, so that's always cool.
That is definitely a very interesting combat item. I like that.
Well, it's a spell. That's what I love about it. You don't see enough spells that let you summon a weapon. I mean, like, you see them at later levels where it's like, okay, I summon this dancing weapon that flits around doing this and that, and just like, there's not enough low-level spells where it's like, I want to just summon something that I can use to smack things with, because I'm not good at using,
I mean, Flame Blade is a decent low-level one.
Yeah, I just don't think there's enough of them.
Yeah, there's not enough.
So that does raise the question. You said it was a spell.
Yes.
So I guess me asking a pseudo-specific scenario. Could you have that be taken out of his hand, or when you go to grab it, does it just kind of like phase through?
It says that it dematerializes when it leaves your hand. So if someone were to disarm you, you would lose this weapon.
But
the weapon would disappear by proxy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Whoa. Yeah, no, that is a very, very interesting item. It does have potential.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like the idea of it, because like you said, Flame Blade, but like, thanks, Wizards of the Coast, I certainly wanted just about every good spell in the game to be fire-based.
Yeah. Why are all the cool weapons, though, related to necromancy and death?
Honestly,
I agree.
I just need more conjuration in my life, because there's one homebrew spell that I can't wait to bring up on the show coming up. I'm going to be putting it on the Patreon and just putting it out there for everyone, really. Hat Trick. I can't wait to bring that on, because like, it's as simple as you reach someplace you can't see and you pull out a You conjure an item that can fit within a 3-foot cube.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that one.
It's basically a Looney Tunes spell.
That's great.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
I gave it to my brother's character, Mikkel, because he wanted something fun to use, and he kept on throwing bowling balls at the enemy's feet.
Oh dear.
But we'll get to that another day. Closing things out here, where can people find you at?
So they can find us on Spotify at the moment. We're working on figuring out why things aren't going other places at the moment, but we're for sure on Spotify. And we're on Twitter and Instagram, and you can find us either at Throne of Dice Gals, or you can find us at Real Scrolls Film Co., because that's the overarching network name.
All right.
I don't have individual stuff for Confessions because I just do it through Real Scrolls at this point. Having to do more than two, like more than two brands is just too much.
That's why we put everything under the Nerd Militia. It's just one banner. Everything's under that.
Yeah. Real Scrolls came after Throne of Dice, and since Throne of Dice already had established socials, I was just like, I'll just revive those.
Honestly. So I'm looking forward to looking into more of your content there, because the campaign sounds amazing. And it's been a real pleasure having you on. And if you need any prospective guests for your show, you can always feel free to ask either us over at the Nerd Militia. Always got plenty of people willing to do whatever or answer questions.
Absolutely. If you want, I've got to start getting guests for season 2 of Confessions here. I'll be pooling that in November, and then I've got one-shots I got to do for Throne of Dice. So, yeah.
Oh, after that hiatus, we got a lot of content coming from you, huh?
Yeah, I have a one-shot that I just did with What the Dice, Mindflayed Mondays, and a Twitch streamer named the Lazy Ninja Dude, and that will be releasing between now and November, I believe.
Hitting the school season running. Good to hear.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of sneak peeks, a lot of introductions. This is actually going to be very interesting. It's good to see from you. Yeah.
Glad to be back.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for coming on. And everybody, you can have a great weekend. This is Dungeons and Talk Shows.